let's talk about a topic that I think is near and dear to all of our hearts, and that's drunkenness. Most of us, if we're on this site, like to drink. Catholics, as a rule, like to drink. I once had lunch with the editor in chief of a very large Catholic publication, very devout Catholic publication at that, and he said, "quote all good Catholics drink," unquote. I think he may have said all good Catholics drink beer. I'm not sure, but anyway, pretty devout individual, very serious about his faith, and he kind of took it that extreme. I don't agree with that, by the way. No good Catholic is a teetotaler. That's kind of for lack of a better term, a Protestant notion, or a Puritan notion rather. Excuse me, a Puritan notion that basically there's something wrong with alcohol, and that's bad. That is a very anti-Catholic, anti-sacramental view, in my opinion. But a good Catholic can abstain for higher purposes, like holiness and what have you. Anyway, what I'm talking about here today, though, is when does drunkenness become a mortal sin? Because you're out late Friday night, you wake up Saturday morning, you're hungover as a dog. That does not mean you committed a mortal sin, but you feel guilty, you feel like crap, and everything just sucks, and you think you're a piece of, you know what. And then you're thinking, do I need to go to confession now? And there's no bright line answer. And this is like the holy grail of theology for me, trying to find an answer to this question. I have talked to no fewer than 3, and I really think it's like 5 or 6 priests on this issue. And I've researched it, and I don't have an answer. I went to confession with one priest who basically said, you can never get too drunk to commit a grave sin. And I was like, yeah, far out. But I don't buy that. Much better priest. I don't know, better priest. I don't know the guy that well, but he seemed like a cool guy, just a little bit too cool, if you know what I mean. But yeah, he basically said, he goes, just time went on is not a mortal sin. Again, that's kind of one extreme. The other extreme basically says if you lose any portion of your ability to reason, like if your reasoning power goes downhill at all, that's a mortal sin. And to me, that's about equally as absurd, because really your reasoning power goes down after 1 or 2 drinks. I mean, I've tried to read complicated books. I start having a glass of wine or something. After like 1 or 2 glasses of wine, it's harder to concentrate, and your reasoning ability, just intellectual ability in general, goes down. So again, I think that's ridiculous. The good candidates are, and by the way, the Modern Drunkard magazine. If you ever read Modern Drunkard magazine, you know what I mean. It's a funny publication that I highly recommend. But it says that if you can lie on the ground without holding on, you haven't had it too much. That's probably a little off to the far left, so to speak. Anyway, here are a couple tests I've caught on to that I think might make sense. First off, it's the complete loss of all reason. That appears to be the most standard definition of when you lapse into mortal sin, when you lose all ability to reason. And I asked the priest one, and this is a good priest. Most of you probably know him. He's a Monsignor. And I said, that's really, really freaking drunk. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, you got to be just like a blithering idiot to actually fall into mortal sin. But it can be done. And I took great comfort. I think, I think that's probably the best test from a mortal sin occurs when you're drinking. Now, by the way, I'm not talking about sins you commit while drinking. If you go out and commit adultery because you're drunk, that is no defense whatsoever. Any sin you commit, you're 100% culpable for, unless perhaps you're a young and inexperienced drinker and don't really have any feeling for how this is going to affect you. But, I mean, I'm talking like really young, like 12. Okay, maybe not 12, but okay. So anyway, so the best standard is, in my opinion, the most reliable is beyond all reason. Another one, though, I think is pretty good, and it might be the standard, is Mitch Pacwa says, if the unreasoning part of the soul becomes more powerful than the reasoning part of the soul, you lapse into mortal sin. That strikes me as pretty good, too. How in the world you measure that, I have no clue. Another priest told me, he goes, you have a wife, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, just trust her. And if you don't have a wife, go with a good friend that you trust, spiritually. And maybe at some point we'll talk about spiritual friendship, by the way. But he goes, and just ask him or her, do you think I went over the board? Do you think I was basically beyond the ability to reason effectively or whatever, and see what she says. My wife is brutally honest in that regard. But in my opinion, just in general, if you retain the common sense not to drive when you're drinking, you abstain that reference, that the inclination to yell at some old woman about what you did to her cats the prior night, things like that. If you can avoid those type of excesses, I think it's safe to say you probably have not lapsed into mortal sin. But it's again, it is a tough call. And obviously, the best advice is just stop at 2 or 3 drinks. That's not advice I follow myself. You've probably seen me at Theology on Tap have more than 2 or 3 drinks. But I can't tell you what the right amount is. I mean, I know people can have 9 or 10 gin and tonics and they're fine. I know some people can have 2 or 3 beers and they're just, blithering idiots. Not blithering idiots, but they're acting like idiots. So, again, good luck working out. I'm 52 years old and I still haven't figured out the answer yet, but maybe someday. All right, goodbye.